But now we are asking if the speed on motorways should be increased from 70 miles per hour. Give us a call for your thoughts on this. 0207 862 2222. So 60 years ago today, the national speed limit was 70 miles per hour. That was brought in a trial on motorways, and then soon after it was made permanent after a fall in the number of fatalities on our roads. A success. And this was a BBC News report that was shown at the time in 1965.
The main object of the exercise, as far as the ministry and the police are concerned, is to try and reduce these high-speed accidents. Now let me make one point straight away, that the motorway is the safest road in the country. Its accident record is lower than any other road, and indeed it's probably the safest road in Europe. It's certainly far safer than the Autobahn in Germany. But nonetheless, when we do have accidents, they're bad ones.
So that must have been on the M1, which was the first ever motorway opened in 1959.
Fascinating. No crash barriers, no hard shoulder.
No, and no speed limit until then, crucially. But after 6 decades of technology improvements, it's reported that cars are safer and road safety is much more advanced. Should we increase the speed limit on motorways, Lizzie?
Yes, we should.
To what?
I think to 90.
90?
90. Yes, look.
Why stop there? Why not 100?
Why not make it the Autobahn?
Well, no, I think 90 is because, look, we have modern cars now. They have so more superior engines. They're made to go faster. I think it's a real shame. We think we're killing the joy of driving. I know probably Kevin here would love us still to be on horse and cart, but I love driving. I like driving fast. I think it's safer. I think, you know, majority cars are more fuel efficient by going faster. And the motorway is one of the safest places to drive. And to drive, let's enjoy driving. You know, we've had the joy just taken out of driving in London, not going over 20 miles an hour. I think causes more harm than good, because the whole time you're looking down, you know.
I mean, it's a very fair point, but in terms of the busyness of the roads, and I think it's ironic we're having this discussion just before a lot of people will be taking to the roads
for Christmas,
to the motorways, and not able to get beyond 30 miles per hour, even on the motorway, because it's so busy.
They would love to do 70 on a motorway, but I wouldn't bring back a horse and car for you. I think a sedan chair. I might be one of those people holding it and running along to carry you. But it's kind of like speed kills. And you could see that the reason why we've gone down to 20 miles from 30 miles an hour in some urban areas, outside schools and so on, is if you're hit, you're something like 4 more times likely to die at 30 than you are at 20. You go at 70, and look, I'm one of the 58%, according to the RAC, who do speed on motorways sometimes. I don't do it recklessly, but you get a very clear morning, very early morning, and there's nothing on. I will sometimes go over 70, I'll admit so. But I'd be wary of going to 80 or 90 without the evidence. I'd want to see the statistics on the accidents, because a lot of the accidents, I would think, Lizzie, are around coming on and going off a motorway on those slip roads. And if you've got people bombing down at 80 or 90 mile an hour, you're going to get more accidents, I would have thought, than you would at 70.
And also, just the fact that cars go fast doesn't mean we should go fast in them. Well, you get F1 cars that are going at 200 miles per hour. Are you planning on driving that fast? Because you could actually buy a Formula One car. It wouldn't be very fun at 100 miles.
I think 90 is the perfect speed to go at. Look, cars are made to go fast. You're supposed to enjoy driving.
The drivers are.
Yes, they're built to go at speed, and you can just enjoy driving. We've forgotten the joy of driving. We're killing that.
Well, someone who's been calling for this to happen is lawyer Nick Freeman, and we can speak to Nick now. He's actually joining us from Switzerland in his car. Nick, what's the speed limits like in Switzerland?
Well, I've just actually crossed over into France, where there are 130 miles an hour on the motorway, 130 kilometres per hour. Sorry, if the weather's good, 120 if it's not good. I think it's important to find the sweet spot, and it's important to remember, and all the arguments have been very properly put before you. The 1965, 70 miles an hour was the maximum speed of the Ford Anglia. I mean, and that was a real death trap. And when you consider the advances in road technology, safety mechanisms in cars, 70 miles an hour is too slow. It's costing the economy hundreds of millions of pounds a year. And there are 44% of people who really regard 80 miles an hour as being the proper speed limit. And if you factor into that the tolerance zone that the police allow, which is 10% plus one, so on a motorway, 77 plus one, 78. So you're not really going to be prosecuted. I'm not advocating this because obviously you need to comply with the speed limit, but really the default position currently is about 80 miles an hour. And I think it should be formalized. I think it would be good to get the country going again, but I think it needs to be dynamic. I don't think we need a blanket speed limit. Certainly not, the Autobahn system on some roads in Germany. I think 80 miles an hour plus maybe a smaller tolerance zone. And that's indicated by a gantry system, which is dynamic. And I think that hits the sweet spot. And just to put it into perspective, about 4% of accidents occur on our motorways. So of all the accidents that we have on our road, it's about 4%. So they still are by far the safest place to travel. In terms of fatalities, they comprise 6% of fatalities, and if you consider the proportion of total traffic, it's 22%. So by a long way, it's by far the safest place. And what we need to do, speed is obviously one aspect of driving. What we need to do is educate people in terms of driving safely, don't lane hog, and also we need to alter the test which actually doesn't allow, has recently been changed, but it should be mandatory that if, as part of your test, you drive on the motorway. So at the moment, you have a system in place where you pass your driving test and you've never driven on the motorway, which is absolutely ludicrous.
Well, that's
so
actually...
I think
Sorry, that is a debate all into itself, and we did have that earlier on this week. It's a very good point, Nick. Stay with us because we're getting loads of calls on this, whether we think the speed limit on a motorway should be increased from 17 miles per hour. David from Southampton, what's your view on this?
It doesn't make any difference. People who drives on a motorway to enjoy driving, you can't enjoy driving because you've got to have your eyes on the road. Your passenger might enjoy it, but the driver doesn't necessarily.
Well, I think people love driving, David, and if you're going to increase that to 80, 90 miles per hour, even make it 100 miles per hour, you're going to get people really loving going on the motorway. It
doesn't make any difference. If people who are being told to drive under 70 always drive over 70, and if they're up it to 90, people will be doing 110. It doesn't make any difference.
So, David, it will make a difference, won't it? I mean, but it fundamentally will. I mean, you're seeing the stats. Half of people absolutely abide by the speed limit. So you're going to get those half of the population driving 10 to 20 miles faster.
The opportunity on the motorway is greater. You can't. I was on an A road yesterday. I was telling you, you're a researcher. I was on an A road yesterday. 5 cars in front of me. Some chap comes up the outside, overtakes me, and has to get in because the road narrows. So what's he gained? 1 car. What's the point?
Yeah, I mean, you're just... David, I think what you're talking about there is just bad driving, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but what, you're trying to tell me that bad driving doesn't happen on motorways?
No, I'm saying bad driving is going to happen regardless. But your point is increasing the speed limit wouldn't make any difference. Well, Nick, do you think increasing... No, because David,
people will go faster. It doesn't make any difference. People will do... People, if you've got a 70 on at the moment, people are doing 80. If you put an 80 on there, people are doing 90. It doesn't make any difference.
All right, well, I'll put that to Nick. Nick, okay, hold on, David. Nick, it'll make absolutely no difference. People are going fast anyway.
Well, as I say, the default position at the moment is there's a tolerance zone, as your listeners indicated correctly, of 10% plus 1. So at 70 miles an hour, the default speed limit really is probably 78, 79 miles an hour. But of course, you have to remember it's unlawful to do that. The speed limit is 70, and what we're asking for is for under certain circumstances for it to be formalised and have an 80 mile an hour speed limit. And what I would advocate, if you do that, as they do in France, is not to have a tolerance zone as generous as it currently is, but say it should be 5% plus 1. And that way we keep people at what I call a sensible speed. I drive 50,000 miles a year. I think 85, 86 miles an hour on the motorway is fast enough, although cars can go much faster. I think that's a comfortable cruising speed, and that's a sweet spot in certain conditions with safety, getting to A to B, and dealing with your last the comment from your last viewer. it will earn the economy or save the economy hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds. That's government statistics. This government said we're going to get the country going. Let's start with the roads. Let's start moving the traffic along at higher speeds when we can do so.
Oh, hold on, Nick.
If it's done.
That's quite confusing. How is it saving the economy money when actually councils gain money from the fines that they give people by catching them speeding?
It's saving money because the haulage vehicles, the lorries, the people who are going about using the roads for professional purposes will get from A to B more quickly.
Okay.
And this is research conducted by the government, not by me. This is government statistics that say they will earn significantly more money if the motorway speeds are increased.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. Let's go back to the calls. David, thank you for your call. We've got Dave on the phone now from Essex. What's your view on increasing the speed limit on the motorways?
Yeah, hello there. Good afternoon there. Excuse me. Listening to what the guys are saying and that, like he said that lorries will go faster and that. No, they don't, because when you drive a lorry, the speed limit on the lorry is totally different. When it says 30, you do 20. When it says 40, you do 30. That is a lorry, that is a law. And I've been driving there most of I'm 64, a big chunk of my life. As a professional driver, I can drive anything. And what I've seen is that if you're on the motorway, people don't keep their distances, they don't drive within the law, they tailgate. And I think personally, if you was driving at 50 mile an hour, keep your distance, you won't have no accidents because you're giving yourself time to brake. If something happens, someone falls out on you, someone hits their brakes unexpectedly, you can drop safely. If you're doing 100 mile an hour, you can't.
So, Dave, you would decrease the speed limit to 50 miles per hour?
Yeah, for safety.
Okay.
Now you've got complete control over the car.
All right. Would you be a fan of that, Kevin?
But Dave's onto something there because, right, look, I've been driving for 40 odd years. I've never yet had a speeding point. I've been speeding, but friends I know who go to speed awareness courses to avoid 3 points. Dave, they're always shocked at when they're told the stopping distance. And the faster you go, you need a greater distance to stop. And Nick's right, cars have improved, they're safer, brakes are better. But nevertheless, if you increase the limit to 90, as you advocate, Lizzie, you're going to need a bigger gap between cars. You're not going to get it.
You need
but
chevrons
you've
instead
got
of
to have common sense as driving. You have common sense, and that's what you've got to do, and weather conditions and everything, like Nick said.
Common sense isn't always common.
Dave, thank you for your call. Ian from London, what's your view on this?
My view totally is that the speed limits on the roads should be kept at 70 or 80 miles an hour. There's no problem in that. But let's stop building cars that do 200 miles an hour, because if we got all cars down to 130 miles an hour, nobody would drive madly on the roads. And to me, that's the most sensible thing to do. I prefer that than building cars that are doing 200 to 300 miles an hour, because the engines are only labouring and they can't do that speed. It's going to wreck the cars in the first place.
I totally hear your point there, but we do have cars that go 200 miles per hour. They're on a Formula 1 track. And Lizzie says because they exist, we should all be able to drive a little bit faster.
Exactly. No, but I love driving. I don't really disagree with that.
The first caller, yes.
I love driving on the motorway. You put the tunes up, you have the roof off, the wind in your hair.
Slightly worrying me now.
Let's enjoy driving again, please.
But
do you think I just want to
do that speed?
Yeah, I just want to go back to Nick. When you are arguing to increase the speed limit, does it have anything to do with the joy of driving? Do we need to stop producing cars that go at 200 miles per hour so the joy of driving at 90 is no longer there?
I think that some cars can travel at 200 miles an hour, but people take them to track days. People are very responsible, and the cars that have that sort of performance, they don't use that performance on the roads. They take them to track days, whether it's professional tuition, and that's where the cars are used. And I think it's wrong to try and control what people can do for their pleasure, for their recreation, as long as they're doing it within the confines of the law. I think anyone who starts, traveling in excess of 110, 120 miles an hour on our motorways, then they'd run the risk of being charged with dangerous driving, which, of course, if they're convicted, carries the potential of a custodial sentence. So I think drivers are mindful of that. What we're talking about is a marginal increase of the speed limit. And does it increase pleasure? Yes. You don't want to be obsessed all the time with looking at your speedometer. Am I marginally creeping over what the speed limit is? There is a natural rhythm in driving, and I don't feel that 70 miles an hour on a deserted motorway in beautiful weather conditions is a natural speed. It is too slow. And there are huge benefits in having a sensible increase, and that is what I'm advocating.
All right, Ian, thank you very much for your call. Joe from Liverpool, what's your view? Increasing the speed limit on motorways?
Well, the argument just presented then is very eminently sensible. Unfortunately, there isn't any practice or training given to drivers. And for learner drivers not to be taught how to drive on a motorway seems ludicrous.
Would you want a learner driver on a motorway driving at that kind of speed, Joe?
No, but they can be trained to drive on dual carriageway roads that aren't motorways in motorway conditions. The biggest killer on the road is not the car, eminently suitable as they may be for driving at 200 miles an hour. It's the driver.
Yeah.
And the fact that they will not allow speed they will not take into account in speeding the distance it takes you to stop.
Yeah.
So tailgating, I've been tailgated on the motorway by people who could read the newspaper on my back windscreen.
That's dreadful.
Not just the number plate. At ridiculously close speed, close distances.
Yeah, and interestingly, there's no real cameras for that. We get cameras for speeding, but no cameras for tailgating, which you're right is incredibly dangerous on a motorway.
I mean, camera technology is good enough. They should do that.
We've got to be responsible.
Or they should take into account some in-car cameras and have some police.
I think there's probably technical. I think Nick Freeman would be able to talk us through the technical difficulties with judging somebody using someone else's cameras. I mean, even the police cameras get brought into question, don't they, Nick, on occasion?
Of course they do, but of course camera evidence can be posted on the police portals, and they can be relied on for prosecution. I do think taking the highway code test every 10 years would help educate people in terms of stopping distance, things like that.
Kevin's gone pale. Kevin's gone pale.
We're concerned with road safety, and there's a reluctance, there's a resistance from everyone to actually acquaint themselves with what they need to know and what they need to do. And we're talking about road safety here. Why is there this reluctance? We should say, yes, what a good idea. Let's do it. Let's make our roads safer and then more enjoyable, because we actually understand what our cars can do and what at the distance we need to keep. If we're traveling at 80 miles an hour, there's stopping distance, there's thinking distance, reaction time, etc., etc.
You might have an argument there, Nick Freeman, because every time I speak to somebody that's been on one of those awareness courses, they always tell me how much they learned on it, and I'm thinking, you didn't learn that before you got in a car? Why is this not? But maybe they did, and we just forget. Nick, thank you so much for joining us for that conversation all the way from France. A huge thank you for your calls on that as well. Don't forget